Tiana Khasi is a jazz-educated but community-focused singer-songwriter and musician based in Naarm, Melbourne. Drawing on both Samoan and Indian heritage, Tiana puts concepts of home and ancestry at the centre of her work, describing herself as a bridge person, doing what she can now to be a good future ancestor. When she started releasing her own music a few years back, she was quickly embraced by global champions like Gilles Peterson and Jamz Supernova, who invited her to travel to London for a Future Bounce showcase. She also performed at local festivals like Vivid, Panama, Splendour, Warm Adelaide and Dark MOFO. Over the last few years, however, she's been slow cooking in community and collaboration, recentering her sense of purpose amongst Naarm's diverse and forward-thinking soul and R&B scenes. Emerging from this transitional state, she's now sharing new music, plus heading to India to perform some shows. Tiana is warm, thoughtful, creative, and I've long wanted to get to know her a little better. We talk about family and growing up. We talk about the reality of being a working musician, balancing day jobs and corporate gigs alongside more artistic work. And she shared with me why exactly she feels such a clear and strong sense of purpose about the music she's putting into the world. Why make music? This conversation was recorded in October 2024. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I am so fortunate to live and work. This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Showtime.
Well, yeah, Tiana Khasi.
That's
Tiana
me.
Khasi?
Khasi.
Good. Khasi. Okay,
Yeah.
Great. One of my favourite things as a radio broadcaster was always finding out that I'd been saying someone's name just slightly wrong for multiple years. Well, it's my
Tim.
apologies.
No, it's okay. We all at least you didn't say the name of your own EP and Ancestral Lands wrong for the last however many years.
No way.
Yeah.
That was your debut EP?
Yes. So this is also, I think this is an important conversation to have because it is a part of the journey.
Let's start with this. Yes.
Returning home is, especially when there's language and things to factor in around, accents and pronunciation. So the EP, my first EP that I put out that I have been religiously calling Meghalaya should actually be pronounced Meghalaya.
Meghalaya.
Meghalaya, yeah. It's kind of got like I'm not sure of the linguistic terms, but yeah, Meghalaya is like is the way to say it. But I have the reason why I picked up the wrong pronunciation is because there are a lot of, I guess, resources and things like that out there where people from all over the world have used the name and said it with different accents. So I felt like with my English Australian accent, it somehow evolved into me just saying Meghalaya. But so that's been an interesting, no one's like, I've not gotten cancelled or in trouble for it, but it has been, I'm on a personal vendetta to make sure things are pronounced right now.
Yeah, I think like doing the work and trying your best, as naff as that can sound, just try your best. Like you don't want to use that as an excuse for being insensitive. Like I tried my best, but it is something that came up a bit in radio actually that I would often get into conversations about and never really found a clear answer on. Is like, I am me, and I have a very like straightforward Aussie accent. And, growing up in a family where we were monolingual, we just spoke English. I learned a little bit of Japanese in high school, but I actually often struggled to get my mouth around the accent. Like I could speak the Japanese words and be mostly understood, but there's this weird feeling where in order to actually be fluent and articulate to a native Japanese speaker, you need to sort of put on a Japanese accent. And I remember feeling really uncomfortable about doing that. And that's translated to radio, where it's like, to me, it's really important to try and honor the true pronunciations of these words. But at what point does it become a weird kind of, if I'm just slipping effortlessly in and out of these different accents, it starts to feel disingenuous.
You're all of a sudden just rolling where does the line? And you've got these, it's an interesting thing to navigate, as a vocalist as well, thinking about, when I wouldn't say that I'm multilingual in a full fluency sense, but I've grown up in a multilingual family, and even my English accent sometimes changes slightly depending on who I'm around. And it's some, I think when it comes to getting people's names right, I think trying your best and, intention is really important. But I think there's so many cool linguistic rabbit holes you can go down, which sort of explain the history of why things are pronounced the way they are, or the way that your mouth is shaped when you use these words. I feel like those are sort of like unspoken treasure troves of history and archiving that happen in words and names. So I think it's important to try and get things right, and also to gracefully recover when you inevitably will get it wrong at some time, at some point.
Yep. Been there. I've been there.
Me too.
I'm not sure I gracefully recover very often, but I appreciate that. Well, let's talk about your family then. We'll get into, we'll talk about whatever we want to talk about, because it's a bloody podcast and that's how podcasts work. But, I like setting the scene often, particularly with artists and musicians when I speak to them for this, to really just take it all the way back before releasing music, before becoming aware of music communities and industry and infrastructure, and just going back to being a kid. And, you mentioned you grew up in a multilingual household. Can you give us context for growing up?
Sure. So my family is from all sorts of places. So I'm the first born in so-called Australia on both sides of my family. So I'm kind of like the first generation of my family to be born and raised here, go through the education system and sort of navigate, life here when you're not migrating and starting your life over. So my dad's family is Indian, Anglo-Indian. So it's kind of like a mix of, all different parts of regions of India. And also there's Scottish and Irish heritage on my mum's side, where Samoan, and my grandfather is Pākehā, New Zealand. So he's born and raised in New Zealand, but of Scottish heritage. And my family, both sides, I think all came to Australia in the late 70s and 80s. And my parents met at Expo 88 in Brisbane, which I feel like is a classic representation of, as a way to sum me up, I'm an Expo 88. I'm the product of Expo 88. My mum was a dancer in the Samoan Pacific Island Pavilion, and my dad was a balloon guy. And
oh my God.
It just, I really hope I've got the story right, but I'm going to run with that because I feel like it just perfectly sums up, I guess, the experience of being someone that comes from a multicultural mixed race family with, everyone on the spectrum of how you can present or experience the world racially or ethnically.
Yeah. I mean, did your mum and dad bond over sort of coming from other parts of the world to Australia? Do you reckon that was part of their initial attraction or their initial friendship? Or
I don't know, but I think something that I've seen...
Or were they just hot? A dancer and a balloon guy at Expo 88, honestly, they were just hot.
my parents are very good-looking people, but But my parents, I think, share something.
This is important stuff to get to. I'm glad we've hit
I
this.
feel like I'm in therapy talking about my family. But it's literally the origins of everything.
Yeah.
So,
and you're going to send us pictures.
Yes, I
if
will.
you can find
I will.
photos, that'd be great of the hot parents.
Yeah, but my parents aren't together anymore. But so I can't fully speak on the whole relationship. But in terms of, I think what I saw as a connection or like a common thread is my parents came from extremely hardworking, humble, entrepreneurial immigrant families. And as a part of, like, there's one side of it which is so hardworking, but I also see on both sides of my family, like, we know how to get together, we know how to eat, we know how to celebrate each other, how to be there and nurture each other. And I can see how, even though, they've come from different cultural backgrounds, there's this sort of common thread of maybe what the migrant experience is starting new life in this country. But yeah, I feel like, as well, my dad, he grew up in Papua New Guinea, as well as, so he was born and raised in Papua New Guinea, and my grandparents are Indian. So I feel like there's a lot of like cultural crossovers as well between, Papua New Guinea and Samoan and just sort of like island culture as well. So I think my dad fit really seamlessly into my family in that sense. And they always like reminisce about fishing and cooking. And, I remember a lot about my childhood and about, family gatherings being a religious experience almost. Like, it happened every week. There was always a barbecue. There was always a party. There was always, a big sleepover at my nana's house with all the cousins. And, it was like mattresses on the floor. Wherever there was space that you could fit, that becomes a bed. And we're all, I can link it totally back into my experience of music as, there's UB40 playing in the background. It's Bob Marley. It's Destiny's Child on the Sunday morning when we all have to clean up and start vacuuming and doing the dishes. And yeah, I feel like before the concept of music as a profession or as a career or something to study, before that was, I guess, in my sphere, it really just was like the decoration, the adornment of the soundtrack of vibrant family life, as well as really intimate sort of quiet moments as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke a few weeks back with Maggie Tra, who's an amazing DJ, electronic music producer, and has like Cambodian and Vietnamese heritage, and has spent a lot of time actually living in Vietnam in the last like 5 years. Founded a community radio station there, kind of got involved with the DJ scene. And yeah, we ended up talking a lot about this sense of, in Vietnam and in some of the cultures that she identifies with, that sense of family and community and nurturing each other in a very grounded, real way is embedded into the DNA of social life and the way people work. Like, it's not a thing people do in order to get something in return, or like, it's just the way you live. And that, whenever she returns to Australia, as much as Maggie has friends here, I'm speaking for her here, but, she basically talked about, as much as she has friends in Australia and opportunities here and family here, that's often the thing that feels like it's missing, is that by default community energy. And as someone, I've spent a lot of time in music in Australia, where if you look in the right place, you can find that community, but it's definitely not there by default. Like, if you found, as you've stepped out of like, childhood and adolescence and the family mode and into a musical practice and into like, quote unquote, the real world in Australia specifically, where do you find that sense of community or that feeling? Do you have to build it yourself, or do you just have to wait until the family gathering comes around and that's when you can like return to it?
Well, I feel like in my family context now, music was never a profession or an industry, or, music community doesn't really translate. there's commercial like pop stars and people you hear on the radio, or you might go to a concert, there's CDs and stuff, but it's not, I felt like that wasn't ever really part of the conversation or the experience. So when I secretly like doubled down on wanting to pursue music, even just from a learning perspective, like I secretly applied for the con when I was in high school. Sort of secretly, like I always was like trying to learn instruments, and I was, would go to choir and do singing lessons and things like that. But it felt like I was really sort of not half-assed, but I was applying for things that I felt would put me deeper into the world of music that I wanted to explore, but were also in the framework of what is considered a legitimate life choice after school. So for me, that looked like applying.
Who are you keeping it a secret from, applying to the con? Do you mean from your family or from your friends?
It was sort of a secret. It was more just like, I'm just applying, see how it goes. But also I've got, these backup plans, or I have to put it as my first preference on the list because that's how they like to see it. But in my heart, I'm like, no, this is my first preference. So I think moving from doing music at school and go through the whole music education experience, and then sort of to my surprise, finally getting into, like the music university world at the conservatorium, which, by the way, took me at least 3 goes of getting in. I got declined the first time. It was a sorry, try again next time. Then someone pulled out and they called me, say, we've had someone not enroll. Would you like to take the bridging course? That's not even getting into the actual course. So I was like, yes, oh my gosh, crying, my dreams are coming true. And then I do the bridging course, which you then audition again at the end of the bridging course to get into the bachelor. Didn't get in that time. Yikes. I had 6 months of just having an identity crisis. What am I going to do? I'm working 3 jobs. I'm a musician.
And how old were you at the time? Are you processing all of this?
Probably like 18, 19.
You're 18 and you're processing this, rejection and holy crap. Yep.
But meanwhile, my family is like, that's nice. Like, that would be awesome if you could do that. But also, like, just get a job. Go do something. Yeah. It's not that, my family is so humbling in that context where I think to pursue something like music is a nice to have, but it's not a necessity, and it's not the be all and end all. It's not how they define success. So it's just like anything that does kind of happen beyond the normal sort of day-to-day working survival. Are our basic needs met? Are we okay? Like, are we healthy? Are we good? All right. Anything that happens with music, that's a cherry on top. So I think getting into doing the whole music degree thing, I naturally gravitated more towards musicians and people in that space that felt like family and didn't necessarily value me. Or not saying they didn't value me as a musician, but that provided me with more of a community and family experience first, and then a music experience second. And so I found myself, in bands and hanging out with crews of people that were almost like sort of like the rebellious people at uni. They'd ace the test, but like skip all the classes, or they'd be like, come on, T, come to the pub. But I'm like, okay. And so, but they were all like incredible musicians as well. And we made lots of music together, and I was able to sort of get into the live music scene in Brisbane and playing improv gigs and going to some of my first, warehouse music events, or, these really community-based DIY music scene happenings that, I kind of got introduced to through, I wouldn't say the naughty kids at uni, but they were the ones that were like, all right, you want a music recital? Here's 40 minutes of double saxophone, double drum, jazz. and you can take your Ella Fitzgerald and your jazz standards and yeah. So I feel like, yeah, moving into this concept of music as a career, music as a profession, I definitely lent more towards people that made me feel like I was a part of a family and a community over people that were like, wow, you're amazing at singing and here are your skills and this is how we're going to commodify it.
Because that also exists in those tertiary places. Like there are people who are, you know, and I don't know, what do you think? Like it does feel sometimes like it comes at least partly down to your family context, you know, like what were your expectations in your family and in your social groups before you get to those places as a young adult, you know, like do you expect to find people who support you and nurture you? And is that the thing you're actually looking for? Many people like, because they haven't experienced as much of that by that time, and they've more internalized like often getting into one of those courses, as you mentioned, for you had to give it a few cracks before they let you in, right? And so it comes with this sense of achievement, like, cool, I'm here because I'm a high achiever, right? And music people often are those kind of high achievers in their school, or like the most amazing music person at the school goes to the con. Yeah, it's like real interesting ideas around success that sometimes can mess with people's heads. Like, do you reckon in a parallel universe there's a Tiana Khasi that went through that process and didn't resonate with the naughty kids and sort of came out as a different person? Like,
yeah, and I don't even want to go down that path like that.
yeah,
I think when I started to play gigs or whatever, a lot of it was cover gigs, and I will not poo-poo the cover gig because that paid my bills. That gave me the experience of, singing, how to sing for 3 hours straight and still have your vocal health, how to interact with audiences, how to learn music, 3-4 hours worth of music to play at someone's wedding on their most important day ever in their lives. And, there is so much incredible experience I got from the pathway or sort of delving into the world of corporate musicianship and cover gigs, that I could see how it would be really comfortable to sort of lean into that versus pursuing original music as something that could potentially be a sustainable or, at the very least, a creative practice that you continue releasing and sharing original music. But yeah, I do sometimes think about even just the experience of getting into the con and what that looked like for me, because I didn't have any friends that were there. I didn't know anyone there. No one from my school went there. I didn't go to they have the young kids programs where some people start interacting with lecturers and with other, musicians that are on the same pathway. They start that in primary school. They've got the little mini orchestras and there's all these sort of programs that, can really line you up to go down that pathway, especially in like classical music. You can, people get lined up with these connections and networks from a really young age. And I just didn't have that. And my sense of being there and studying, I felt like I didn't have the privilege of not having a job. Like I could not just study full time. That wasn't enough. I didn't live at home. I was most of the time working at least 2 jobs plus starting to do cover gigs or whatever on the weekends. And it's funny, like my story or experience in music education for like a university pathway, I don't know if it's a success story. It took me 6 years to finish what should have been a 3 or 4 year degree. It took me at least 3 auditions to get in. I failed a couple of classes a few times because I was either like too anxious to show up we used to have these weekly melody appointments where you'd have to go in and do sight reading and, memorize these things. And I just would look down the hallway and go, you know what? I don't have to do this. I could just go home. I would like rock up for my like mini exam and just go, I just don't, everything in my body is saying, get the hell out of here. So I just, I was not equipped to blitz that experience. And funnily, like I also failed classes because I was on tour, which I found really weird because I was like, I'm telling you at the beginning of the term that I've got, these weekends where I have to fly out on a Thursday or a Friday. I'm playing major festivals. Look, I'm on the radio with this guy. And like, I was having what should have been the professional music experience. Is that not what we're going through university for? Well, I don't know. What are we there for? Are we there to be masters of technique and theory, which I really respect that. But also I'm here to be a musician for life. So I'm getting gigs and I'm telling you I can't come to class. This was before COVID and before you could do Zoom classes and get your online resources. It was like, if you're 15 minutes late, you failed, that you didn't show up. So I think you had like 2 or 3 strikes. I was like, I'm going on tour. I'm not going to make it. Can we make this work? And it was just like, if you're not there and if you're not sick, you didn't come to class. And if you don't come to class 3 times, you failed. So I definitely failed like a compulsory class one time just because I was on tour, which I found really bizarre because at the same time, I remember Danny from the Kite String Tangle, who I was touring with, his poster thing went up on the side of the building because he went to the Gold Coast Pops, like the PopCon for pop music. And so they were celebrating him with a giant poster on the side of the wall of the building. And I'm failing my class.
And you're in trouble.
For going on tour with him.
Yeah. Wow. Today I learned there's a Gold Coast Pop Con. That's
yes. Yeah. So at
what
the
a great
Gold Coast,
combination of words and concepts.
I know. I feel like I'm. I don't want the university to come for me. So I'm just allegedly. This is my experience.
Allegedly. Okay. Allegedly. Yeah. No, they're not. They're not listening. It's fine. Yeah, that's so interesting. Because you'd be learning so much outside of the lecture theatre and outside of the workshops and stuff, outside of class.
Yes.
It's funny sometimes that those courses don't have some system for like giving you extra credit or recognising the work that's being done out in the field. But I guess if there is a bit of a disconnect, like if you're starting to play on festival stages and you're playing with someone like Danny, like the Kite String Tangle, you're potentially starting to discover that part of your musical practice is going to be in a part of music that maybe even now in 2024, some of those traditional music schools don't align with or don't quite understand. So they'd be kind of like, okay, well, yeah, sure, you're at a big festival, but what has that got to do with what we're trying to teach you in the class?
Yeah. I think a lot of it
hard to kind of explain to them that it's all connected.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there probably is some way that you could convert your life experience into university credit points, but it would probably require you writing an essay about it and doing an analytical report or something, which I don't know. When you're working 2 jobs, you're struggling to pay your rent, all you want to do is play music and then you're doing the thing. For me, I remember one time, here's another time I failed class. I did. We could just make this podcast about all the like ways I've like failed or made mistakes, but I'm actually able to like laugh and smile about it now. I remember one time I did a course which was, it was kind of like getting credit points for doing an internship, which I was doing with like a small like local independent, sort of like a label / booking or promotion company in Brisbane where, they would book hip hop and soul and jazz acts that would typically skip Brisbane and go to all the other major cities. So, they were just a bunch of people at uni pulled money together and were like, all right, if Guilty Simpson's coming to Brisbane, how much does it cost to buy his show? So we would put on these events, and it was probably like one of the best and like formative experiences I had in terms of music business, which was like learning about money and contracts and ticket sales and all that stuff. And I had that running alongside the uni thing, and they were like, all right, it's great. So just do a journal, and we want like a big essay and report about it afterwards, and then you can get credit points for it. And I just got to this point where I was like on a plane going, I think I was like going on tour or traveling, and I was like, we're about to take off. I'm going to be in another time zone. And do I really, the experience is in here in my soul and in my brain. And when it comes to writing an essay about it, I just can't bring myself to do it. And so that was just like, wow, failed that course. Yeah. But the experience is still there with me. Like it's still something that I refer to and use to like today. So I don't know. I feel like I've learned a lot about how to define success or how to measure that for myself outside of these systems. Yeah. And also procrastinate.
Yeah. So, I mean, huge question, one of the hugest of them all, and I don't expect a quick or easy answer, but if you have redefined success for yourself, like what does that look like at the moment? Knowing that it continues to shift as you get older and, you know, circumstances change, but like what are you hoping to quote unquote achieve with your music right now?
Yeah, I feel really clear on this. I think after having released, like gone through my own process of releasing original music, and really like growing up and growing into myself, I know that I'm successful when music takes me home. So physically, geographically, if my music continues to bridge the gap between where I am now and where I've come from and puts me in right relationship with my family, my ancestors, the land that I'm on now and the lands that I've come from, I know I'm doing a good job.
That's beautiful and concise, and there is a clarity there that must be really energizing, and if anything, a bit of a relief to have such a focused and worthy purpose. Does it feel that way?
Yeah, because it allows for flexibility and change that happens externally. This, obviously, I don't want to be in debt. I can happily say I'm making music and releasing original music and I am not in debt. I feel so free for that.
Yep. But Jen Clower just told me that there is only one rule in music and especially in the DIY kind of context. Never go into debt. You can break all the other rules. Don't go into debt. It's a huge thing.
Yeah. So it's like to be debt-free and making music, it means that I'm not having to make decisions that might compromise my integrity or values. I know that, you know, there are going to be changes in the worlds of technology. I've already experienced it. I made music and released music before Spotify existed. And I've seen how much it changes your approach and your release strategy and all of that. So now that I'm releasing music again and like I just put a single out, that this is my whole testing ground and my whole new experience of what it's like to make music and release music, factoring in all the tech changes that have happened, even in the last 5 years. Those things are always going to change and evolve, but I found so much clarity and sort of like this sense of groundedness or being grounded in really like defining what success looks like for me in what I described before, because that doesn't change. But there are other measures too. I think about how does my body feel when I'm going through this? Can my nervous system survive this if I keep repeating this process of releasing, writing, touring? So, you know, those are really good check-in points. I always have like, like this pile of washing, that's clean washing that needs to be folded and put away. And sometimes my measure of success is how do I feel about facing that pile of washing that needs to be folded today? Do I feel like I have capacity to do my general things that, help me live just a baseline, healthy, regulated life at home? I really value that. I value my home. I value having the means to live in an apartment and to pay my rent on time and not be putting myself through mental turmoil over finances. I value being able to like communicate clearly with band members or people I'm recording or writing with. And those are my measures of success.
Mm-hmm.
But we can also like get financial and be really pragmatic and practical about it too, because, you can also always put a number on something and work towards that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think how you feel and how things relationally around you look are also really, if not, they're definitely the more important indicators of success.
Yeah. And that you might be thinking about where the money is and how to get it, but that is like secondary to your primary like motivator, your purpose, which is about home.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, and that you're not necessarily going to compromise that. You're not going to be completely disconnected from the commerce and from the reality of being in the world as an artist. But, that can sound like a really hardline thing, but I feel like we're actually in an era where I'm seeing just artists do that more and more, because the world like needs change urgently. And so, and we're all feeling it. And so I think musicians in particular are a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of going like, partly because all of the commercial structures and the idea that you can make money from music has become so obviously not attainable or so difficult to attain. Like it's so transparent that it's so transparent that it doesn't work for most people, that it's not a viable thing to expect to pay your bills with. And if anything, like it always sounds strange when I say it, and it can be off-putting for many artists, particularly those who believe deeply in campaigning for labor to be valued better in music, the ones that are saying Spotify should pay more, we should have minimum wages at gigs, like, which are really, really worthy things to work for. It's not like I don't think those things should happen or be
like unionizing
be campaigned for. Yeah, that stuff is essential and really important. But I think at the same time, it feels like what's happening at the moment is that there's a generation coming through going, well, the reality is music is kind of not functioning in our like economy, which means it actually frees us up to have a clarity of focus. Whatever your mission is going to be, it's probably going to be a cultural mission or a social mission or even a personal mission, but that can kind of comes before that economic layer. You don't have to answer this, Tiana, because this is getting a little bit into
I want to answer it, but go for it.
Well, it's a more boring question. More boring question than you might expect. You don't have to show me receipts, but I'm curious, like at the moment, are you like, does your income come from music or from other places? Like, do you have a day job at the moment?
Yes. And I've decided that I want to be really transparent, and I can't advocate for like saying you should have a day job, but I've been working full time since I moved to Melbourne. So I came down in 2019, and it was necessary because I'd moved down, I put out a record, I had a tour, and I had overseas shows booked. And there was no way I was going to make that happen whilst also starting over in a new city and having to pay rent, like Melbourne rent. I'm sorry, but this is we're not talking Brizzy share house, $90 a week for a room. But yeah, I was in such turmoil when I started releasing music, sort of like when I put out my own record, but like my personal world was just falling apart. And I don't want to say that money fixed that, but having a day job where I was able to show myself that I could show up to something Monday to Friday, I could whether it's gritting my teeth through it or actually finding pleasure and joy and connection in this totally out of music world, having that consistency and stability helped me really get clear on how I wanted music to look like for me. As it's a parallel career path. And I do feel like having a day job, like I work in the corporate world, I'm in full incognito mode at work. No one knows I do music. I don't talk about it. I've put I'm in my disguise. If you see me in some corporate space, CBD, no, you did not. That was not me. Don't talk to me.
Do they Google? Has no one found you on the internet, or?
I don't use my government name for music, Tim.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's a beautiful name. I just assumed you had a lovely, beautiful name.
But yeah, I do find that like having a day job, it also taught me a lot of skills that are really relevant to music, in terms of even just like how to run a meeting, how to have a conversation with people where you know what you need to get out of it, as in like you've got a clear direction of where the conversation needs to go, what the outcomes of that are, how to communicate, professionally to people, and simply just how to show up for something, even if it's not the most fun, exciting, life-changing thing, consistently. Yeah. Because music is not like that either. Like, it is such a privilege and a joy, and I love music and I love creating. But, even showing up to a studio session when you don't feel like it, but you've got it booked in, that requires a level of discipline to still show up and do the thing. You usually end up turning it around and making something of it. But I do feel like, this is a lot where my family influence comes through as well. It's like this, I want to kind of restore dignity to the fact that like artists can have day jobs and it not be to the detriment of their creativity and not impact. If anything, it can sometimes support and improve what they put out because they're not making music for the sake of paying their bills. They're, in spite of having maybe the financial stability, they're still choosing to do their craft. And that's 100% the case for me. I've been able to do so much more with music because of having a job. Do I want to work this day job forever? No, absolutely not. I would love to just be in music and to have all of that sort of financial, stuff cross over into my craft. But also like I've done some really, for me, like bucket list things because I've had the stability and the resources from working. And
yep.
I'm on tour right now, and does the tour pay for everything? Like if I was to do this purely, like we're talking financially, if I was to do this tour and be making sure that like all the expenses of the tour were covered, my band is paid, above the absolute bare minimum, that our transport, our Ubers, that we're fed, and that I even get a take-home pay at the end of this. Like it just wouldn't, it would be, it's doable and it could have been done. But because I have my own personal finances as well, I'm able to like supplement and make sure that the experience, which is what I was talking about, my measures of success, that I'm not stressed because I'm not like, I've done my couch hopping, I've done my share house, sleeping at random people's houses on tour. Those days are over, Tim. I am in my 30s now. We're not doing that anymore. So yeah, for me, it's like, am I able to eat good food when I'm touring? Am I resting? Am I, are people that I'm working with feeling valued and appreciated? And this is going to really like annoy some people, but you can thank my day job for that. I mean, even this conversation we're having now, sorry to like break the fourth wall, but if I didn't have a publicist that I paid for with my day job, we probably wouldn't have initiated this conversation. We might have because we talk anyway.
That's not true. That's not true.
Yeah, I know, but it's
we were already in the DMs, but yes.
But the experience of releasing, recording, promoting and touring music, especially original music, in this sort of ecosystem, if we're going to replace music industry with ecosystem, to cut through the noise, you do need money. And I know that there are programs like Unearthed, and there are the 1%ers of organic viral discovery moments. But I also think the reality is you do need financial resources to cut through the noise in this industry or ecosystem where people are releasing so much music all the time. And if it means having a day job to do that, and then you still get to tour, you still get to record and release your original music, you get to have the artwork you like, you get to, you get to do all of these creative things and then not be in personal debt because of it. Like, that sounds like a pretty good alternative. I'll take the day job.
Yeah. I have thoughts.
I would love to hear them.
Look, the idea that you would say to a musician, particularly one that's just starting out and has hopes and dreams, and say to them, you know what, the best thing you can do probably in the long run is get a day job. Like, so many musicians have this visceral reaction to that, and I think it's because it's still kind of a slur. Get a day job, like it's still, and it goes back to that thing that you were saying, even where like in high school you weren't even sure about applying to the con because some part of you was like, I don't know if I can let myself believe this is a real pathway. So, but it is one of the benefits of sticking around for a while. You say you're in your 30s. I might be in the next one along from that myself. And you do just, one of the benefits of that is that you just have some experience and you see lots of people try a lot of different things. And I can say with some authority that the people who seem happiest and have the most kind of grounded and often like even quote unquote successful musical practice in terms of whatever metric it is, whether it's what you're describing or something else, like those people often have either had a day job the whole time or have been dipping in and out of day jobs that they care about and that they're happy to go to. Often the best day job you can have as a creative person has flexibility to allow you to go on tour, for example, or, is part-time maybe. For some people, it is great to have a day job that's got nothing to do with the creative process so that you can sort of partition that energy into something else. For other people like myself, right, my day jobs, I think it was probably most of my 20s, my day jobs were part-time and my first couple of day jobs had nothing to do with music. I worked at a primary school for a few years, like plugging in printers, like in the IT department, right?
That's awesome. And then, I bet you've got so many good stories from that.
Oh, maybe. I mean, I did dress up as Clifford the Red Dog once, which was pretty cute, and got swamped by a bunch of 7-year-olds. That was a very physical experience, actually. It was good. But then, like slowly my day jobs have actually become more creative and have like dipped into the music world to the point where my last day job was very music related. It was radio presenting and it was on a music radio station, but it was still my job. Like, like I wasn't doing that purely out of my like artistic creative love of radio. Like, it was my job. You still have to show up on
time. You still have roles and
all those things you mentioned. Yeah. There's like, it's a bit of a superpower in music where, so there's a couple of things here. One is like, if you can get some experience outside of music entirely in another industry or sector or whatever word you want to use, even though all those words kind of make me cringe a bit, but it's like, okay, if you just work in the real world in a different area, you can come back to music and realize that music is pretty chaotic and it's kind of unprofessional in a beautiful way and in a bad way. There are elements of the way music functions that are really backwards and really don't make sense.
If music had a HR department.
Well, it just doesn't. That's a big thing, to be honest. Like, is it as beautiful and glorious as it is that a lot of the music infrastructure is this interconnected, interdependent network of small businesses and sole traders. No one has a safety net. Nobody has. Yeah. So it's tricky. It's not like I think if the whole music ecosystem professionalized overnight, whatever that means, it would, I think, become quite a grey and less colourful thing to be a part of. However, if you do find yourself in a position where you've got a corporate day job and you're learning all of these people skills and management skills, project management, whatever it might be, those are kind of superpowers in music. Like you come back into music, maybe you've got some creative talents and you've got stories to share, whatever it might be about yourself as an artist. But if you're also bringing back into your practice, like some of those just boring as hell life skills, then you can show up as like a superhero in a music world that's full of people who don't have life skills, just like not really being in the real world. And, like it's interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think about how important, financial literacy is just as a basic skill to navigate the reality that is like living in a capitalist society. And I feel like that's how artists can be so vulnerable and so, preyed upon, because if you've been sold this idea that all you need to do is 100%, like 110%, put all your heart and body and soul and skill and time of free time into your craft, but not be savvy about even just numbers, learning how to, if someone offers you a $10,000 job, contract, gig, payout, whatever, do you know how much tax you need to pay on that? Do you know how to actually deduct all the potential expenses that come from it and then assess the amount that's left over? Is that enough to live off of? If you look at the hours that go into it, your daily living costs, I think, artists being able to, put on the front, enjoy the perception of like, I'm the artist that doesn't have to, I just do art all the time. I love that. But for me, it's not sustainable. I actually can't pretend like having a day job is the worst thing ever for me, because it's not. It's actually, you can thank my day job for me still being able to put out music post-COVID.
100%.
So I even being able to understand contracts, wording, there's just so many practical life skills that do actually allow you to be more creative. You get that stuff out of the way, it's done, and you don't have to absorb all your personal emotional energy into like, why am I only getting paid this much, or why aren't they replying to my email, or there's such a crossover of like the personal emotional side of music and then also the professional skills that it takes to just do the thing.
Yep. We should also add in here though that like right now getting a day job isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world either.
No.
So
no.
But if you can, there's so much getting that balance right is essentially one of the biggest challenges, especially if you do it for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that balance shifts at different times, and you might find that actually, you know what, you need to quit your day job because the music is sort of quote unquote, I'm saying quote unquote a lot today, but music is going well. So
allegedly,
you know what, I'm going to take the plunge, and I'm allegedly, but then 2 years later or 12 months or 6 months later, you might be like, oh, I got to go find a job again because, I had a little journey and a little bit of, I've just gone on a little ride, but I can't make it work much further. And being really, really practical and honest about all that stuff from right at the start. I think is healthy.
Removing the shame, removing the shame from the concept of like, yes, I do need to pay my bills. There is no shame in that. And to make an association that some piece of music or craft or work that's come from your own story and extracted from your soul, if that doesn't pay your rent, that's okay. That has nothing to do with you as a person, with your art or what you're creating. It's just systemic. It's not. It's like it's a what's the word? It's it's like institutional and systemic. It's not you.
Totally. You're not a bad musician or not a, yeah, you're not a, I'm trying to find the word for like not unworthy, I guess. Like,
Yes.
you're not an unworthy musician because you can't fund your life through your music, because your favorite Australian artist probably has a day job. And I think that's the other thing that I've valued that. Or yes.
Or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt.
Yes. Yeah. And they're just sort of gritting their teeth and hoping that it all works out. Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Holy crap.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's also just important to distinguish the difference between like music, when we talk about music industry and music ecosystem or like the professional world of it. Music at its heart is a cultural practice. It is about people and community and stories. And as long as you're doing that part right, I think the rest that's going to ebb and flow and change. You know, we sometimes look to the music industry to fulfill maybe a little void in our cultural colonial hearts, where we should actually be looking to our own stories and history. Like that's what my practice is all about. It's like, I don't think the industry, I've done the whole industry thing where I've gotten like, oh, well, can you do like a top line for this major label artist? But I couldn't write the line myself. Or, you know, so that might have been more commercially successful, but culturally successful, no. And I feel like maybe sometimes the money and the sustainability part doesn't even touch on like, is this culturally sustainable for me? Is this sustainable for my soul? So yeah, I feel like people need to work out, what are you looking for? Are you putting music out and trying this practice of music to meet a commercial need or to kind of fulfill a cultural need as well? I think those distinctions are really important.
Yes.
Yes.
I was trying to decide whether to say amen or hallelujah, but I'm not really a religious person. Before I let you go, I need to get an update on, because I'm glad we've got a chance to properly chat a bit.
I know.
And we'll also do it without microphones at some point, because we've bumped into each other a bunch, but never had the chance for a proper chat. But I bumped into you at Strawberry Fields, I think, with Mindy Meng Wang.
Yes.
I believe.
Oh no, it was WOMAD. WOMAD. We were.
Oh, was it?
Yes, it was WOMAD. We were in the artist buffet breakfast area, and I remember we basically sat here talking for so long that the hash browns got cold and the bain maries were getting packed up. So.
Hang on, didn't I bump into you and you were singing in a choir where you were doing covers of songs? That was Strawberry Fields, I think. Was it?
Look, what happens at Strawberry stays at Strawberry, Tim. I can't
okay. Say no more. Say no more. I really I need to take a leaf out of. Do you take leaves out of books? I don't think so, but I want to take a leaf out of your book, and start compartmentalizing. Like Tim Shiel can be this like podcast character, but then my music thing is this other guy, and then I've just never done that. I've never I've never had secrets.
Okay, so Tiana Khasi said in this interview, keep secrets, compartmentalize your life, do not integrate or cross over anything.
Get a day job.
Get a real job. And
get a real job.
See, this is my inner auntie coming out.
Don't go to class.
Fail. Keep failing. You know what?
Yeah.
I actually do stand by all of those statements. I feel like it's just there's a nuance to all of that.
Totally. That's what these conversations are about. 100%. It's about it's all gray area. Everything in our world is gray area, and you can do the best thing. You can try to do the best thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes the advice you're going to get is not necessarily the shiny hallmark idealistic thing. It's much more nuanced. Much more nuanced.
I think I've learned the reality of I think I've been in music professionally for about 10 years now. You know, what it should look like to be 10 years into a music career. I don't know if that should look like having a day job, or like, should I be, you know, on high rotation on radio stations, or I don't know, like I feel like you just get to this point where it's like, all right, the reality is I'm not the 1%. I'm not the 1% where I put out a song and then my life changed. And, well, it did change when I decided to release music. My life 100% changed because I just like threw, what do you toss a coin in the ring? I don't know. You do some metaphor about putting your foot in the...
I think you throw your hat into the ring.
Throw your hat.
But you take the leaf out of the book.
The leaf out of the book, and I put a hat in the ring. And yeah, so I guess you can say that my life did change from putting out a song. But when you talk about all these intersections of small businesses, media, contractors, you've got government organizations, arts funding, all these little things that cross over and integrate for the stars to align and for you to become, you know, Beyonce overnight. It's, you know, it's not even 1%. So the reality is, and this is like Auntie, if I was to go Auntie mode and be like, Auntie T right now, Auntie T says, you are a star in my eyes, but to the world, get a job.
And I think that's where we'll leave it. Tiana Khasi, thank you. What a lovely chat. Thank you for being so generous and so so open. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we got to do this chat.